Hi, so we just looked at settings of your component, and now next we'll be looking at the scripts tab. Here is an area where you most probably add a lot of custom scripting. So this area is focused on giving you an interface to add custom scripting to your component in a global way. So obviously you can add custom scripting per admin backend view, but you can also do that within the global scope with regards to many certain values. The one thing that is nice to have here is you can add create user helper method to the component. Now the user helper method is simply code. If you do not know how to write PHP, then this method will be of no use to you at all. But if you do, then this method will come in very handy. Let me illustrate that to you. If you click this, yes, I have a component in which I've already implemented this feature, and it's called the cost benefit projection tool. Now if you click on companies, you can actually click new, and then it has an area for you to create a company, and ideally you would connect that company to a user in the system. But if you don't add that company to a user, because a user can have multiple companies, so that's why if you clicked on this tab you could select a user. But if you haven't selected a user and you've entered an email address and a name, then, and also the needed information of course, then you will, once you click save and close or save, the system will actually create a user for you, and it will automatically email the user details to that user, and that is because of that specific helper class that I've added. So ticking helper class, now obviously it doesn't do it on its own, you need to write the code for it. So let me show you where I did it. In the controller you have an area, if we open up company, you have an area called post save. Okay, it's this one here. It's the post save hook. Remember when we looked at the admin views, we could target this area. In fact, that's exactly what I did. So let me show you. So I'm in the admin view for company, and if I go to PHP, you would see that I have some Ajax there, and then I have an area which is the post save method. And in the post save method, I'm basically checking some things, some values, and then when I realize that this user does not exist, let me just check your company. Here it is. If the user does not exist, so basically I'm doing a check here, then I'm using the helper. No, wait, that's not the feature. There it is, create user. So again, I've spoken about this placeholder convention before. Here you are using the brackets convention, not the hash one. So it's 3 brackets, it must be uppercase component, and then again 3 brackets and helper, and this will be replaced with the component's code name. Okay, so that is what that does, and then it basically gets the helper class create user. So in the helper class of this component, if I close this down and I go to the helper and I open the helper class, you see that is the name. So it's the component's name, and then it's called helper, and in helper class there is a feature called create user. There it is. So basically it gets an array in it, and that array has some values which we'll be using, like password 1, password 2, and it will set the password. So I'm not going to explain this code, basically just showed you where the function is. So the function was added to the component's helper class, and in that script I'm simply calling that function after having built the user. So I said the array is name and the email is that. Obviously the function, if there is no password set, it will set a random password, and it'll again use another method which also is part of the helper class. We exported with all helper classes this random method where you can get a random string. So that is creating a user, and then it sets up the password, and then it gets the array ready, gets a model. Now the model I got from there, get model. Again, we are using a component builder custom method which gets the specific model from the system, and then basically fires the register method upon this data set, and then updates the parameters for the system regarding this new user, sends him the email, and then returns the ID, because obviously we were looking for an ID. That's actually what we want. We want to wrong tab. We want to get the ID. There we have the ID. If we have the ID, if we don't have the ID, we'll send a message to the user, and if we have the ID, we will basically store it into that database to connect that item to that user automatically, and then click save. Now that is custom scripting. So this little switch is just adding that method to your helper class. That's all it does. Whereas this switch adds the UIKit library to your media folder, as well as integrates it dynamically wherever you use the UIKit class names. So you won't need to write that in any custom way. It automatically adds it. The same goes with food table. This CSS is global CSS for all the backend views, entire backend. So if you want to add CSS that would target the whole backend, then you do it there. This is a place for you to add your own custom scripting to the helper class, the admin helper class. So as you can see, I have a whole custom scripting here for sermon distributor, for the admin area, and as well as an event. Now I spoke about this event concept briefly before, but what we want to achieve with the event is basically on every page. If you look at this sermon distributor, the backend part of it anyway, it has a file which is the main file which Joomla calls first, called sermon distributor, and in that file it basically triggers the global admin event. And the global admin event is nothing else than a function inside of your helper function. So it always triggers it if you add that switch, and then it passes it the document object. Okay, so the document object is being built up here, so I'm just passing it over to the global event, so we don't need to redeclare it there. So if I was to open the helper class, which we have here, and scroll all to the top, wait, not to the top, then you would see that I have, it was the top, I was just in the wrong file. It says here load Dropbox Ajax. Now this again is just another function, right? So I wrote that function. So you can basically add whatever functions you want to run globally every time a page opens. Now that's sort of a way to run it like a chronicle job on the front and the back end of the component. If you have things that you want to be done chronically, this feature is really targeted at doing that. So here we are loading the Dropbox Ajax. So if we go back to the component, you see that I am just adding that script. First I just ticked global admin event, yes, and then I added that script. That's all I added, and that script was taken and placed inside of the global event. The trigger, this trigger is set by component builder itself. You don't need to write that. It will insert this trigger itself if you just because you clicked yes. You need to then just add the script that must run inside of the global event, which I decided to be another function. And then this function, which I want to run, I added to the admin view. You see here is the admin helper class. I added that function here. So I basically just used that name and called it self because we're inside of that class, right? So that's how you call a static class method, and pass the same information because in my method I'm adding JavaScript to the DOM, right? So to the document object. So I want that document, and then I said add script declaration, and simply that means on every page of this component in the backend it adds this little script, which then calls by Ajax, which I explained previously, and it starts checking the Dropbox listing automatically. So that's just an automatic feature I wanted to add to my component, and this is the way that I did it. And then I felt that I want to add it that you can do this in other components, and that's why I added this event switch. Okay. Oh no, it's not that area. That's this event switch here. Okay, and then this same goes for the site area. I also added that same class. You might ask why I have different helper classes for the front and the back. Well, it's really about security, I suppose, and permissions. There are things that I want to do in the back end which I'm not asking that much questions, where in the front I might be more protective, I would suppose. And so for that reason, an implementation also is often different in the front than in the back. So that's why we have two different files: helpers site class and the helper admin class. And you can add custom scripting. As you can see, I added that same script to the front, and I also added a site event which also triggers that same script. Now you might say, well, if everybody triggers the script, then it's going to be running multiple times. Well, that's exactly part of what I did. I actually added a feature in the Ajax call that logs whether it's already active, and if it's active it just ignores that call. So basically it has a controller over whether it should run or not, meaning that if it needs to run, because it even has a timer. You see, you can set for the Simon distributor, you can set how often you want Dropbox links to be updated, every day, every 2 days. And so this script, if it checks for, if it wants to update and it's not time, it just dies. It just doesn't do anything. So it's very light. Since it's Ajax, the user himself don't even notice a delay in his page. So the page opens as fast as it always do, and then fires that Ajax call to the server, which starts a whole process on the server. So that's primarily what this is all about. Obviously you need to know programming, and you need to know how to secure all that, and I'm not going to try and explain that to you now. I'm just saying that this is all possible inside of Component Builder, simply through these custom areas. You can also add a SQL dump. Instead of adding it to the actual views, you can export all the views and add them here, and it will be actually added to the same file. And so don't do it twice, but this is another area to add a SQL dump file. And then we have this nice feature called dashboard methods. You see, let me show you what I've done with it. Again, just that you know, all this data that I'm showing you is dummy. It's not related to this application really. It's just me testing it. So I wanted to add this usage statistics to the component, so you could see which country has done what for when and in what area. So I needed to take a lot of different database tables and calculate use by certain ways and I wanted to have that on the dashboard. Now the dashboard already had all these icons, and so I didn't want to add another custom view, which I could have done, a custom admin view. I wanted it simply right there at the moment of the page load. And so we added that feature to Component Builder, and we called it where we called it dashboard methods. Now let me go to one where I'm actually implementing it, so I could spend more time in explaining and less on typing. Okay, so here we go. Basically, I created a method called get usage data. It's a public function, public method, and inside it I added my script. And obviously inside of this script I'm calling other methods which I made protected. So the script that must be called from the dashboard tab, I'll show you that in a moment. You set that up here. So here is the tab and it's HTML. So we called the tab usage statistics, and the header we made table, and here is the HTML, okay, which we are using. And in the HTML you see that I have PHP, and the way we do that is with that convention of open bracket, question mark, PHP, and echo, and then closing it again there. So basically I'm checking whether the usage data is there. Now how do I know that I should target this usage data and then items? Well, this is a convention, this area there, and the way that convention works is by that one there. So usage data relates to usage data. So the moment you add the word get, this word get, in front of a function, it will be added to a global, the result of that get will be added to this, and without the get name. So that's the convention. The convention is, you could have called it get the man on the moon. Then this would be man on the moon. This, and obviously all lowercase, man on the moon. So that will be dropped, and this is going to be used lowercase as the this. So that's the convention. I know it might not be that obvious, but it works. So your other functions, if they are protected, shouldn't have the word get in it. At the moment it's set to set, that one is set, and then this one is visit check, and this one is set companies and set countries. So you can see I could add a lot of PHP in here, and all these PHP together basically gets the data that I want on the page. And when I get the data, I've placed it in what is seen as the item. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let me see. Set statistics, return the statistics. Okay, so I'm returning a field here, or a method value, and this method value is being populated in these sub functions, and in one of them it is adding over here the name items as a pointer. So it becomes an object. Well, it is an object. In fact, I think I set it as an object up here. There we go. And then I loop through the companies, and as I loop through them, I'm busy totaling and adding and going on. Okay, so I'm not going to explain the code itself, but basically this is getting returned, and because it's an object, if I look here, I'm able to target items as an object. And then if it exists and if it's set, I start looping through items, and certain places I'm using totals and different values. So that is just adding some of that data to the page. And this area here, now I could have made this much simpler, right? So it maybe not look that intense to you, but this could have been a simple class. In fact, you could have left this out completely and just put a comment. So you could have done this because it's gonna scream at you for, you know, this is compulsory. So you can just say not needed, and then in here you could just do HTML. So if you just want to give information to the user about who made the component, maybe, or some, hey, you want to run an RSS feed, you could have done it right here. Okay, I'm just showing you that you can reach into PHP here, and that the PHP that you reach in has the convention of dropping the get and then using that front area usage data to place information in, which you can parse in your HTML here as you would do in any other component view. Okay, so that is just quickly looking at the script area of a component. I realize there's so much more to say, but I really can't elaborate too much on this. Since it requires a skill in PHP, it's something that I think will only become very useful if you're a developer who has developed a few components and can then see how he can easily add custom scripting to his component through this methods. Okay, well, next up we'll look at the README and maybe the FTP server concepts. Thanks for watching.